tell tonight was in the midwinter. Short, dark days. Cold too. The snow lay on the ground, and the water really was like stone. And it was quite a long time ago. We're travelling back in time to a small town just north of Moscow. In this town lived an old gentleman. He'd lived there all his life, and he'd grown up and he'd worked and he'd married and he'd had a family, but now he was getting on in years. His name? Pietro Panov. Pietro was a shoemaker by trade. He'd been doing it for years. His sons hadn't really wanted to join in the family business, and so as soon as they got old enough, they moved away to Moscow and the big city and the bright lights, and he was sure that they were probably doing really well for themselves, but you know how these things go. He didn't get to hear from them very often. It'd been a few years now since his wife had passed on, and he was all alone in his little shop. His girth had got rounder, his beard had got whiter, and those little round glasses he found that he needed to wear more and more often. The evening we're going to talk about tonight was the eve of Christmas. It'd been a very cold day, never really got light, but as the evening drew in and the lights went on in the town and people started to scurry home, he stood on his doorstep in his shop and he looked up and down the street, and he could smell, oh, Christmas, cinnamon, apples, mulled wine, all the beautiful things that everybody was going to enjoy this evening and all day tomorrow. But Pietro was happy to be on his own, really. Everybody liked him in the town. In fact, nobody called him Pietro or even Mr. Panov. Most people called him Papa. But he still was going to be on his own this Christmas. He shut the shutters and made his way to the back of the shop, where he had a wood-burning stove, a bed with a nice warm blanket, and an easy chair to settle down in. This being Christmas Eve, he decided, where is that family Bible? I think I might read the Christmas story again. He pulled out the large volume from under his bed, opened the pages and began to read the story of the very first Christmas. It was quite warm by the fire and he was getting quite sleepy, and his little ground glasses started to slide down his nose. And in that twilight time, where he wasn't awake but he wasn't quite asleep either, he heard a voice. Papa? Papa Panov? Who was that? Papa? Papa Panov? Don't be silly. Push those glasses back up and... I must have been dozing off. That's not right on Christmas Eve. I need to read the story properly. So he got back down to his story. As he read along he read the pages and he read through the verses, and he read about Mary and about Joseph and not being able to find anywhere to have the baby, and the stable, and dearie, dearie. A baby having to lie in a manger. If they'd come to me, the baby could have had my bed. He'd have had a nice warm blanket on it. And he read a bit further. And he read about the wise men coming to visit him and all the gifts that they brought. Dearie, dearie. Now then, if he'd come to me, what would I have brought? I know. He got up on his feet and went through to the workshop. He looked around and around and under the counter and on the shelves, and eventually he found on the top shelf a box. Pulling it down and blowing off the cobwebs, he opened it up to discover a tiny pair of leather shoes. Red leather shoes. He'd made them many years ago when his eyesight didn't need his glasses. In fact, he'd kept them for sentimental reasons really, because they were probably the best pair of shoes he had ever made. That's what I would give the baby Jesus. Put them back in the box and put them back on the shelf. Returned to his armchair and once again began to settle down. Once again the glasses slid down his nose. Once again he started to drift off. And once again, Papa Panov. What? By this time the glasses had fallen off completely and he couldn't see anybody in the room. In fact, everything was a bit hazy. But the voice was really clear. Papa Panov, you wanted to see me? Keep an eye out tomorrow, from dawn until dusk. I will come. But beware, I will not come so that you can recognise me. I will be in disguise. But look out all the same. And then I will visit you if you find me. At which point he drifted from twilight sleep into deep sleep. By the time he awoke, the sun's rays had started to show through the shutters. Sunrise already! Jesus is coming! Jesus is coming to visit me today, and I haven't even opened the shutters! He raised up his feet, ran into the workshop, opened up the shutters and looked out onto the street. He looked up and down and there was no one around except the road sweeper. Now the road sweepers had to be up early. They were dirty and they were smelly, probably from all the horse poo they'd had to lift up. But people then were as people are now. They weren't bothered about throwing their litter and their rubbish around. Someone else will clear it up. That someone had to be the road sweeper. But this morning was cold and hard, and the frost bit right through to his bones. His coat was far from adequate for the weather. In fact, his fingers were so cold they could hardly grip his broom. Papa Panov looked down the road. Just the road sweeper. But does look a bit cold. I wonder if he'd like a pot of coffee. He called the road sweeper over and asked him if he would like some coffee and a warm by his wood stove. Well, the road sweeper was absolutely over the moon. Very few people even noticed he was there. Those that did weren't very nice to him. So for somebody to invite him in meant the world to him. He came in, Papa poured him a drink, and they chatted a bit, but all the time Papa Panov was distracted. Eventually, the road sweeper couldn't take it anymore and said, "What's the matter? You seem like your mind's on something else. Jesus is coming to see me today. I saw it in a dream. He's going to visit today, but I've got to look out for him or I won't recognise him. I wonder if he's going to come as a baby, or I wonder if he's going to come as a young boy, or, well, he grew up, didn't he? So maybe he'll come as a man. I don't know. At which point the road to... Okay. Well, I tell you what. I'll go back to my work, and then you can go back to looking for Jesus. And I hope you find him. But thank you very much for the warm. That was fantastic. At which point he left rather quickly. As the morning went on, Papa Panov looked through his window, he went to the door, he looked up the street, he looked down the street. He saw lots of people passing, lots of people going to church for Mass on Christmas Day, but none of them were Jesus. By lunchtime, he stood on the doorstep getting a bit despondent. Maybe I missed him when I was giving the road sweeper his coffee. When he saw a girl. Well, she was a girl to him. Not much of a lass. Thin dress, even thinner shawl, but carrying a small child. She started to waver as she walked down the road. You know, she looks hungry. And that poor child hasn't even got any shoes on. Oh, can't have that. Dearie, dearie, that won't do at all. He went out to greet her and asked her if she'd like to come in for something to eat. At first she was wary, but she was so tired and so hungry. She hadn't got a husband, and she'd lost her job. And the only relatives she had were in a village 5 miles away, and that was her only chance of survival. So she had to walk there. Well, you can't do that on an empty stomach, and this child needs some milk. Come on in, and I'll sort you out. He made her some soup and bread. He warmed some milk for the child. And whilst he was doing it, he looked down and thought, you know, I think I might have something that would fit those feet. But no, they were for Jesus. I promised them to Jesus. But I can't have a little child going with nothing on their feet in this weather. Eventually, he stretched up to the shelf, brought down the box, lifted the lid. You know what? The shoes were a perfect fit. The young girl and her child had been there about an hour when she said, I must go because the light will be fading and I'll not get to the next village otherwise. At which point Papa Panov suddenly realised that he'd spent an hour not looking out for Jesus. Oh dearie, 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 what am I going to do? I'm really sorry. Yes, I understand you need to go because I need to go and look for somebody that's coming because Jesus is going to visit me today, you know, and I might have missed him already. The girl and the child left. And Papa Panov spent the whole of the rest of the day worrying about not seeing Jesus. He looked up and down the street. There were people that greeted him and he waved. There were people that passed by that looked sad and lonely, and they didn't have a smile, so he gave them one of his. There were children that he threw crusts of bread out to, or there were beggars that he gave a few measly coins to, but all the time there was no Jesus. The sun set. The lamplighters lit the lamps, and it was time to shut the shutters. With a heavy heart, he made his way back to the back of the workshop, sat in his big armchair, Dearie, dearie. Didn't work, did it? He didn't come. Well, maybe he did. And I was just too busy. I missed him. Dear. As he started to relax by the heat of the fire, and his glasses began to slide down his nose, he heard the voice. Papa? Papa Panov? Yes? Papa Panov, did you see me? Oh, I tried. I really tried. I looked out really hard, but I just couldn't. Are you sure you didn't see me? And then, before his eyes, as clear as you're looking at me now, he saw a road sweeper. He saw the girl and the baby. He saw the lonely that needed a smile. He saw the children, and he saw the beggars. And the voice said, you did see me, Papa Panov. For as you do to any of these my children, you do it to me. Thank you for making my Christmas so special, Papa Panov. At which point he drifted off into deep